Can I prove right now how this wolf can be tamed? Benita wasn't challenging at any point. She just wanted to know if the words the other was saying were sincere or just a sweet deception to make her lower her guard. He is sure. Yes. Wait here. Kurafat disappeared for a moment and returned with a small box in his hands. The contents were a mystery. She placed her on the edge of the bed and then fixed Benita with an unreadable gaze. What I'm about to do, I do because the person in this room is you. So our agreement is that from now on, no matter if you're scared or insecure about something between us, you'll tell me directly. Benita bit her lip before shaking her head, but she didn't expect to be so surprised when Kurafat suddenly knelt on the ground with both legs. The fright made her get up from the bed and go to the other one, but when she tried to kneel down too, she received a look that stopped her. What are you doing? I'm allowing you to be above me, because if I'm going to be tamed by someone, it's going to be you. My queen. I am not submitting myself out of fear, but because I love you. Understand this. This is not a competition. Between us, no one will be defeated. Benita couldn't describe what she felt. So many emotions hit her at the same time, catching her completely off guard. She never imagined that Kurafat would show his submission in this way, and much less that the simple way of calling her P, as she requested, would bring so much warmth to her heart. Hearing the word love being said so clearly and directly made his heart beat with happiness. His queen wasn't just proving it with words. She chose to demonstrate her feelings in a visible and undeniable way. In that box there is a collar. What? You heard right. It's a collar for people. Kurafat had secretly ordered it ever since Benita said she wanted to see it tamed, but he never imagined that he would use it in a situation like this. After all, if it needed a master, it was only natural that it would use a collar, right? That was what Kurafat thought. Take it and put it on me. But know that once you do, it means you will always be above me, and you will always have to look down on me while I serve my mistress. Because tonight, I will love you my way. I will not hold back. I will not hide anything. And I am sorry if I am not as tame as you imagined. You didn't have to do that. When Benita had said she wanted Kurafat to be tamed, she had never imagined it would involve a collar to show ownership. It was overkill. But for some reason, her heart was beating wildly. Something inside her told her she liked this. Stop talking and put the collar on me already. I am eager to serve my mistress. Queen, how could she say these things so naturally? But know that, even if I'm tamed, I can still bite my owner. So be prepared. Clack. The sound of the collar buckle snapping shut around Kurafat's delicate neck made Benita swallow hard. In addition, there was a small silver plate reflecting the light, with her name engraved on it as the owner. Kurafat's face was impossible to read at the moment. Her dark hair, loose and messy, fell down her back, and in front of the collar dangled a leather leash. Benita never imagined that she would take this so seriously. Kurafat gave himself completely. Like a tamed wolf. You should hold that tab. Kurafat raised his face to look at Benita, who stood up. The young woman took the leash with a mischievous and curious look. Like this, Benita grabbed the leash and gave it a gentle tug. Immediately, Kurafat's face came closer. Since she was still kneeling, her head was right in front of Benita's most sensitive area. For Benita, looking down and seeing her queen staring at her sparked an intense electricity in her. So she sat on the edge of the bed and pulled on the leash again. Can I do whatever I want? Yes, everything, but I don't promise to obey everything. Can I give any order? You can, but I already said that I can't guarantee that I'll follow them all. Benita nodded, understanding that it would be impossible for the woman before her to obey her 100%. But what Kurafat had already done was far beyond what she could have expected. Are you sure it doesn't hurt? She tugged on the leash once more, not too hard, just to reinforce her point. If I feel pain, don't think you'll come out of it unharmed. You speak as if it were true. I already told you I bite. As soon as she finished speaking, Kurafat leaned over and gently bit Benita's inner thigh, causing her to let out an involuntary moan. In addition to biting, she slid her tongue over the sensitive skin, making Benita's body heat up instantly. Instinctively, her fingers tightened on the leash, pulling it tighter. "Who gave you permission to bite there, little dog?" Kurafat frowned at the way she was called. Besides tamming her, Benita wanted to turn this into a role play. Would this woman always do something unexpected during? "Puppy. It's wearing a collar, it has a leash and an owner. If it's not a dog, then what is it? I don't know how I should feel. It's strange, but being controlled suddenly made me feel better. In an inexplicable way. Still, that doesn't mean she can't go back to being the huntress. Let her think she's in control for now." "Whatever, where else can you bite?" Benita pulled the rope tighter, making Kurafat frown as the noose tightened around his neck. The slender body wrapped the rope around the palm of her hand several times until it was firm. Kurafat had nowhere to escape. In fact, the society she grew up in shaped her to understand people, not to mention her experience working in a bar. She had seen couples doing intimate things and even witnessed Mint and her girlfriend kissing frequently. She was just a human with feelings, desires, and curiosity. And being in an advantageous position, she felt even more confident, after all. Who knew how many times the queen would give in like this? "You like biting my mouth, don't you?" Kurafat obeyed without hesitation, but he did not bite down immediately. Instead, he savored the soft lips before sinking his teeth in at just the right pace. However, her calmness seemed to irritate someone. The rope was pulled again, making her frown before retaliating with a stronger bite, surprising Benita. "If it hurts, let me know. Remember." Where is your promise to be yourself? Why do I feel like Daddy is forcing himself? Isn't that true?" Kurafat let out an irritated sigh. If he was too nice. It wouldn't do any good either. She was hard to please. "I'll assume you've allowed it. If it's you, I'll allow anything." With those words, the slender body was pulled down. Kurafat used her own lap for support. Tonight, Benita would be on top, forced to look down at her. Lips pressed together, sharp teeth nibbling until Benita knew that if she kept this up, her lips would be swollen and bruised. Kurafat's hands roamed her body, squeezing her soft hips and pulling her clothes. With only a shirt and panties on, the friction between their bodies was undeniable. The fingers holding the rope dug into Kurafat's shoulder as her lips moved down to his neck, leaving painful marks. She was clearly doing it on purpose, like a puppy biting on instinct. How could he see her any other way? "Don't make too many marks." HMMM. It was unclear whether it was a response or just a moan, as her mouth was still occupied. Benita frowned as her breasts were squeezed tightly. Invasive hands reached under her shirt, pinching her nipples until they were hard before trying to undo the buttons, unsuccessfully, until a violent tug ripped them off, scattering them across the floor. Honestly, watching Kurafat mark her body while she could only look down was embarrassing, but also deeply satisfying. Her body responded well to that savagery. The queen, who had always sworn never to submit, now gave her all the rights she demanded. Breasts were bitten slowly, wet sounds echoing in the room along with Benita's moans. Her hips ached from being squeezed so much, and her nipples, pulled hard, would soon become sensitive. "Why did you close your eyes?" Kurafat's harsh voice sounded displeased. "It's just that. Tingling." Benita frowned and pulled the rope as punishment. "Use that mouth for something else. Stop talking." "Why? Does that excite you more?" Their eyes locked for a moment before the slender body challenged. "Can you really do it?" Benita stood up, untying the rope and taking off her panties, leaving only her unbuttoned shirt. She tossed the garment into Kurafat's lap before pulling the collar back, forcing her to look up. "Use that mouth properly. Because I want to see if you keep your promises. I already warned you that I don't like challenges. Excuse my insolence, but I'm not wrong. Face the consequences, then." She shouldn't have provoked her. With her hips immobilized and unable to fight, there was no escape. The excessive pleasure made her want to fall into the queen's lap again, but now Kurafat was buried between her legs. Determined, Benita tried to resist, rubbing her hips to ease the tension, but it only made things worse. I can't take it. She begged for mercy, her fingers buried in Kurafat's hair. But when she saw the look he gave her, she understood. It was a punishment for having defied her. This had nothing to do with submission. Benita trembled as she reached her climax, but Kurafat didn't stop, forcing her to collapse onto his lap and hug her. I am tired. Her voice came out weak. After all, she had to hold herself back from falling while dealing with the other's skillful tongue. What? We haven't even started yet. Daddy is really good at this. After resting for a while, Benita began to move, nibbling on Kurafat's neck. Don't move. I want to bite you too. You can bite, but not now. I want to go to bed. Now the two of them were in bed. Benita's body was marked red, while Kurafat lay beneath her, accepting the inferior role for the night. The collar was still around her neck, and once again Benita was served. This time, at least, she had something to hold on to, but her hips were red from being squeezed so tightly. Give me some. You're so good with that mouth that it's almost irritating. Lately, Benita had been barely breathing. One tug on the rope was enough to make her completely lose her grip. She wasn't sure who had tamed her like this, but it was definitely someone who knew exactly what they were doing. It took a while for her hips to finally free themselves. Her throat was already hoarse from moaning. Now, Benita was sitting on her lap again, their lips glued together in a violent drink, with no escape. But to respond, when she bit, Benita bit back. Benita did the same, imitating every movement until she no longer knew how wet that rose was. Suddenly, long fingers slid inside her without warning, and not just one, but two. Even though they had done this before, Benita was still inexperienced. What should have been her advantage quickly became her defeat, and now she was completely at her mercy. Deep. In their position, Kurafat's fingers could reach even deeper places. Benita bit her lips as they moved inside her, making her squirm without any control. And when Kurafat discovered a sensitive spot and insisted on it, her body melted like wax under a flame. Can I bite? There was nowhere else to vent his frustration, but Queen's perfect shoulders were an irresistible invitation. Benita looked at herself, marked by bites, pinches, and red hickeys, and wished she could paint her body the same way. You can bite, but remember, the stronger you are, the stronger I will be. Benita nodded in agreement. At this point, anything went, she had to bite. Kurafat nibbled, sucked, and at one point even gave her hip a firm slap. But since he was underneath, there were things that bothered her. She couldn't push her back against the bed. She couldn't control the pace as she wanted. Harder. It was Benita who ended up taking the initiative, moving her hips to find friction. As they learned each other's language, her breasts were already marked red, her nipples taut from being bitten and sucked as if she were hungry. I want to stay underneath. She mumbled, exhausted. Kurafat was pushing her to the limit, leaving her without strength. He is sure. Kurahat asked, his voice hoarse. Of course he would, but not without conditions. Don't torture me. Benita spoke in an unconsciously pleading tone, trying to kiss his chin to move him. It worked, but only a little. As their hips pressed together, Kurafat unhooked the leather collar from around his neck, leaving only the nameplate. A deal. Also, let me tie your hands and you can lie down. Put your hands behind your back, Bunny. Tonight, you're going to be this dog's dinner. No, I'm going. Benita fell onto the bed, panting, as Kurafat flipped her onto her stomach, pulling her hips up while tying her hands behind her back. A vulnerable position that left one very pleased. Kurafat covered her body, kissing softly from her rounded shoulders to her sweaty temples. Benita was surprising. She endured his wildness without hesitation, as if begging for more. Hey. Benita moaned softly as her hips were squeezed, Curafat's fingers sliding inside her. She couldn't take it anymore, not that she didn't like it, but she was exhausted. We need to sleep. Remember, you are above me now. That means nothing will change. If you ever doubt yourself, know that I will never doubt you. Darling, she said. Yes. Do you want to be my favorite every day? Because you're the only one I'd kneel for. Benita didn't remember how she answered. But the fact that Curafat had held her like that all night proved that she must have said yes. And most of all, Curafat had slept with the collar still around her neck, just because Benita had said she liked it. How could I refuse? Even if there were 100 Pequeens in the world, in the end, the only person who would matter to her would be the queen in her arms.